The humming stopped on a Thursday. Every morning for the past 4 years, she hummed the same soft melody while making coffee, barely audible, just a thread of sound, like she was breathing music into the walls of our home. And then, one day, it vanished. I didn't notice it at first. It's hard to notice the absence of something quiet. But around day 3, I realized the house felt colder. Not literally. The heater was still kicking in every morning. But colder in that way you feel when someone who used to love you stops doing it and forgets to tell you. She still brewed the coffee, still poured it into that stupid chipped yellow mug she got from a flea market in Michigan, still set mine down beside it without saying a word. But no hum, no eye contact, just presence without participation. I asked if she was okay. She blinked at me, nodded once, and left the room. That's when it started. The silence. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even uncomfortable. It was clinical, like I was being emotionally euthanized with quiet indifference. She didn't leave. She didn't cry. She didn't sleep in the other room. She just turned into something still. A painting of herself moving through our apartment, looking like my wife, smelling like my wife, but not being her. I used to fill the silence with questions. Did I forget something? Did I say something wrong? Are you tired of me? But when you get nothing back for long enough, you stop asking. You stop trying. Instead, you start watching. And that's where it really begins, isn't it? You start noticing strange things. That her phone is never out of reach. That she keeps the bathroom door locked now. That she suddenly wears perfume to the grocery store. You catch her wiping a smile off her face when she walks back in from taking a call in the hallway. I once stood outside the bathroom door for 10 minutes, just listening. Nothing but the sound of the faucet running. Not brushing teeth. Not a shower. Just water. And when I knocked, nothing. She came out 5 minutes later, phone tucked under her arm, hair a little damp at the ends. Said nothing. Walked past me like I was furniture she'd outgrown. That night, I looked in the mirror and said it out loud for the first time. I think my wife is in love with someone else. The weirdest part? I didn't even feel pain. Just a strange sort of calm, like I'd finally figured out the rules of a game I didn't know I'd been playing. The next morning, she made the coffee. No hum, no greeting. I sat down, stared at the mug, and realized something so disturbing it made my skin crawl. She'd stopped putting sugar in it, and I hadn't told her I stopped taking sugar. That meant she was making his coffee now. The next time I cried, it was over a toothbrush. It was early, maybe 6:15 a.m. The kind of morning where the sky is that dull gray soup and the walls feel too close. I had just opened the medicine cabinet, like I do every day, and noticed there were 3 toothbrushes in the holder. We only owned 2. Hers was the blue one with the soft bristles. Mine was the black one I'd had for way too long. But now there was a third, new, red, still stiff. Out of place, aggressively red, like a warning, like blood on white tiles. I stood there for too long, just staring at it. Like if I blinked, it might vanish. It didn't. When she came into the bathroom behind me, I stepped aside and said, "Hey, whose toothbrush is that?" She looked at it, barely, and said, "I didn't notice it. Maybe you bought it." I wanted to say, "I've used the same toothbrush for a year because I keep forgetting to buy a new one." But I didn't, because I knew that wasn't an answer. That was a test, a pressure valve. She wanted to see if I'd push. I didn't. Instead, I shaved silently while she stood behind me and brushed her teeth with the blue one. She didn't even glance at the red. After she left the room, I opened the trash can. Nothing. No packaging. No receipt. Just yesterday's cotton pads and one of my receipts for batteries. It hadn't been bought yesterday. This brush had been here. Just, not for me. That night, I dreamt someone else was living in the apartment. I never saw their face, just their silhouette, always behind a door. They'd move when I moved. Open doors after I'd closed them. Drink the last bit of orange juice and leave the carton in the fridge like a message. I woke up in sweat and Lyle, our cat, was sitting at the edge of the bed staring at the hallway like he'd seen someone walk past. He hadn't looked at me in weeks either. Later that day, I started looking through her things. Quietly, carefully. I hated myself for it. But what do you do when someone stops treating you like you're real? You start proving you still exist, even if it means becoming something you're not. I checked her bag. Nothing. Her laptop was locked. Her phone, always on her. But her sketchbook was still in the kitchen drawer. She hadn't used it in months, or so I thought. When I opened it, the first 10 pages were old designs, logos, product mock-ups, clean and professional. But after that, it changed. The drawings turned personal. Charcoal portraits. A man. Over and over. Same jawline, same eyes. Not me. Someone younger. With a scar on his temple. In one sketch, he was holding her face with both hands like she was something precious. In another, she was sitting on his lap, hair falling around them like curtains. The final drawing made my mouth go dry. It was our apartment. From above. Like a blueprint. My side of the bed was empty. Hers had a figure in it. Next to her was that same man. Smiling. One hand resting on a red toothbrush, drawn in bold ink. She hadn't just thought about him. She'd made room for him. I sat there for 10 minutes, just flipping back through the pages, trying to find a version of her I recognized. But she wasn't in those drawings. Not the woman I married. Not even the woman who used to hum while pouring coffee. That night, when she got back from another one of her walks, I asked her a simple question. Are you still in love with me? She looked at me, blinked once, and said, That's a complicated question. Then she turned off the hallway light and went into the bedroom. She didn't ask me to follow. And I didn't. But I didn't sleep either. I sat on the couch until dawn with the red toothbrush in my hand and a question I couldn't silence in my head. If I leave now, would she even notice I'm gone? The next morning started like the others. Quiet. She made coffee. No hum. No smile. I stared at the red toothbrush for a long time before finally tossing it into the kitchen trash. Not because I was done thinking about it, but because I knew if I didn't remove it, I'd end up doing something I couldn't undo. But it didn't matter. That night, it was back in the bathroom. Same one. Same spot. This wasn't paranoia. I had thrown it away, wrapped it in paper towels, and wedged it under last night's pasta shells. It had food on it. I remember that. But now it was clean. Upright. Like it had never left. Like someone had placed it there deliberately. I didn't mention it. I just stared at her during dinner while she scrolled through her phone with her left hand and stirred her rice with her right. She didn't look up. Not once. The silence between us had grown so wide it felt like an extra person was sitting at the table. A stranger. A guest neither of us acknowledged. That night, after she fell asleep, face down, arms folded under the pillow like she was hiding something, I did something I hadn't done in years. I checked her phone. I know it's wrong. I do. I know how that makes me sound. But if you've ever loved someone so much that their silence starts to rot your insides, then maybe you'll understand. You reach for whatever's left. Even if it burns you. The phone wasn't locked. She must have forgotten, or maybe she didn't care anymore. Her notifications were cleared, every app wiped clean, but her voicemail had 2 unheard messages. The first was from a pharmacy about a prescription refill. I barely registered it. The second was from a man. He didn't say his name. He didn't need to. His voice was smooth, low, practiced. The kind of voice that comes with confidence, or maybe guiltlessness. I can't remember the exact words, but I remember how he said them. Casual. Familiar. Intimate. Hey, I left my book at your place. Don't worry about it. I'll grab it next time. Also, I miss your laugh. That was it. Nothing about the message was graphic. Nothing directly confirmed anything. But the way he said, your place, it gutted me. My place. Our place. Her place. Not once did he say our. The part that shattered me most? She had saved it. Not deleted. Not archived. Saved. She heard that message and let it live in her phone, in our house, in her pocket. Right beside me. I put the phone down and just stood there, in the hallway, for what felt like an hour. My chest was tight. My ears were ringing. And I kept hearing that one line over and over in my head. I miss your laugh. She hadn't laughed around me in months. I couldn't even remember what it sounded like anymore. And this man, this ghost in our home, he missed something I didn't even have access to anymore. That's when the real fear kicked in. Not just betrayal, but the terrifying realization that she might actually be in love with him. Not a fling, not a mistake, but a new life forming right beneath my feet. She didn't stir while I paced the kitchen for the next 2 hours. She didn't come check on me, didn't text, didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't know that I knew. And somehow, that made it worse. Because that meant none of this was about guilt. She wasn't hiding it. She just didn't care if I found out. I stayed up until sunrise, staring at the front door, wondering if I should just walk out right then. Just leave everything. No note. No confrontation. No begging. But I didn't. Not yet. Because in the morning, I planned to follow her. Not out of jealousy. Not even for revenge. I needed to know where she went when she left the house with that tiny smirk on her face. The one she didn't wear for me anymore. I needed to see the lie with my own eyes. And I did. What I saw that next day changed everything. I woke up before she did. That alone was rare. Kala had turned into an early riser over the past year, as if the sunrise whispered secrets to her I wasn't allowed to hear. But that morning, for once, I beat her to the light. I sat in the dark on the edge of the bed, shoes already on, bag packed, waiting for the sound of her soft movements down the hall, waiting for her to leave. And at 7:12 a.m., she did. No goodbye, no glance, just the sound of the front door closing like punctuation at the end of a sentence I didn't write. I waited 2 minutes, then followed. I took the stairs, not the elevator. I didn't want to risk timing. She was moving quickly, headphones in, coat collar up, the same green one I bought her last Christmas that she said wasn't really her style, and then wore nearly every day since. I stayed back half a block. The streets were still quiet, littered with fallen leaves that hadn't been swept. It smelled like wet concrete and burning toast from someone's kitchen window. She didn't look back once. At first, I thought she was heading downtown, but she turned early, cutting through the narrow pedestrian walkway behind the old church that's been boarded up since spring. That threw me off. I stayed close to the shadows, my heart thudding like I was the one doing something wrong. I had never followed anyone before. I didn't know it would feel this intimate. She stopped at a small building wedged between a dental office and a bakery that had been closed for months. No signs, no names, just a narrow red door and a buzz panel with one scratched-out button. She pressed it, then looked around, not casually, nervously. I ducked. Seconds later, the door clicked and she disappeared inside. I stood there across the street, hidden behind a delivery van, hands freezing, staring at that red door like it might open again and swallow me next. But nothing happened. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 45. I crossed the street. Touched the buzzer. Cold metal. No label. I didn't press it. I just needed to feel something real. Something physical. I paced the block twice, trying to keep my hands from shaking, and then I walked home. I didn't wait to see her come out. But when I got back to the apartment, her coat was already hanging by the door. That couldn't be right. I had walked fast. Nearly jogged. I hadn't lost her. There was no side exit from that building. No back alley. I know that neighborhood like the back of my hand. She had beaten me home. And she was already in the shower. I stood outside the bathroom door, watching steam curl out from beneath it. Listening. And then I saw it. Her phone. She had left it on the hall table. Unlocked. It was open to her photos. I didn't think. I picked it up and scrolled. At first, nothing out of the ordinary. Screenshots of recipes. Old pictures of Lyle. A blurry concert photo from months ago. Then I hit a folder I'd never seen before. It was simply named Tuesday. It was Monday. Inside were dozens of pictures, all time-stamped from last week. And none of them were of her. They were of me. Sleeping. Reading. Staring out the window. One was from behind. A clear shot of me doing dishes. Taken from outside the kitchen window. I felt the air leave my lungs. I looked down the hallway toward the bathroom, the sound of the water still running, and I realized she wasn't just ignoring me. She was watching me, documenting me, like I was the one being investigated. I put the phone down exactly where it had been. I backed away slowly, quietly. My mind raced through everything I thought I knew about our distance, our silence, her strange behavior, and none of it prepared me for that folder. This wasn't about another man anymore. This was something else. And the worst part? I had no idea how long it had been going on, or what she was waiting for. I didn't speak to her for 2 days. Not because I was trying to punish her, or play her game, or mirror her silence, but because I was afraid of what would come out of me if I opened my mouth. I didn't trust myself. Not with what I knew now. The photos, the folder, the building, the toothbrush. None of it added up to anything that made sense, unless I considered something I didn't want to believe. Maybe she wasn't cheating. Maybe she was planning something. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. I just sat on the floor of the living room with Lyle curled beside me, listening to the sound of the refrigerator hum and the occasional creak of floorboards that no one was stepping on. I stopped eating. I didn't go to work. I stared at my phone, waiting for a message I knew I'd never get. Not from her. Not from anyone. By the second night, my body felt hollow. My thoughts wouldn't sit still. I started pacing the apartment compulsively, touching each doorknob like a ritual, checking the windows, double-locking everything even though we lived on the 5th floor. I knew I was unraveling, but I didn't know how to stop it. She noticed, too. I caught her watching me, just once, from the hallway mirror. She said nothing, but her eyes lingered just a second too long. And then she went back to pretending I didn't exist. That was the night I finally did what I'd been avoiding for weeks. I searched the bedroom. Not just casually, like I'd done before with her sketchbook. This time, I tore it apart. Slowly, methodically, drawer by drawer. I cataloged everything. Receipts, ticket stubs, a notebook filled with half-erased doodles and lists of grocery items we never bought. But it was under the bed where I found it. There was a narrow wooden box. Unlocked. No label. About the size of a shoebox, but heavier. I pulled it out with trembling hands, and before I even opened it, I knew this would be the moment. The moment where everything either made sense or collapsed completely. Inside were 3 things. The first was a pair of gloves. Men's gloves. Not mine. Brown leather, stiff with wear. There was a small tear on the left thumb, just barely stitched up, like whoever wore them didn't care much for detail. The second was a disposable camera. Used. Every shot spent. I recognized the brand. One of those vintage ones people buy for nostalgia. There was no date, no markings. Just weight. Heavy with evidence. With memory. With whatever she didn't want me to see. And the third was a folded piece of paper. It was old, yellowed at the edges, soft like it had been opened and closed 100 times. I opened it. Slowly. Inside was a list. A handwritten list in callous, precise, slanted script. It read, Emery, 6:50 a.m. Emery, 7:30 a.m. Emery, 12 p.m. Emery, mail arrives. Emery, sleeps. Emery, doesn't check closet. Emery, still doesn't ask. There were 15 entries total. All about me. Every line marked a moment. A movement. A choice. But the last one stopped me cold. Emery, almost ready. That's all it said. No context. No explanation. Just those 2 words. Almost ready. I read it 5 times, each time slower than the last. My mouth had gone dry. My skin prickled. And suddenly I understood something so chilling, I nearly dropped the paper. She wasn't watching me for leverage. She wasn't watching me out of guilt. She was tracking my behavior, documenting it, measuring it, preparing for something. I put everything back exactly how I found it. I slid the box beneath the bed, lined it up with the dust trail, closed the bedroom door without a sound. And then I did something I hadn't done in nearly a month. I spoke to her. She was in the kitchen again, making tea. No humming, no perfume, no sign she even knew what I had just uncovered. I leaned against the wall and said, "What am I almost ready for?" She paused, just for a second. Then she turned, smiled at me like we were old friends catching up after years apart, and said, "What are you talking about?" I stared at her. She didn't blink. She just sipped her tea and walked past me like my question meant nothing. Like it was a joke. Like I was the one acting strange. But I knew better now. Something was happening, and she was waiting for it. Quietly, patiently, like a storm cloud that knows the lightning is already on its way. And I had a feeling I didn't have much time left before it hit. I spent the next day walking in circles. Literally. I left the apartment with no plan, no destination, just a primitive urge to move. I circled the block over and over, watching people live normal lives. Arguing couples, mothers pushing strollers, a man in a business suit shouting into his earpiece about projections. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone had someone to answer to. Everyone seemed real. I didn't. I felt like I had slipped out of reality and was floating above it, looking down on a life I no longer belonged to. Kala didn't text me. She didn't ask where I was. She didn't even notice I'd left. I didn't know where to go until my feet carried me toward the only place that made sense in that moment. A photo lab. I know. Who even uses those anymore? But I remembered this tiny place tucked between a vape shop and an abandoned laundromat, a family-owned photo spot that still developed disposable film. I hadn't been inside since I was a teenager. I brought the camera from the box with me. I had slipped it into my coat when Kala was in the shower, handling it like it might bite me. Now, I handed it over to a tired man behind the counter who didn't even look up when he asked, "Same day or next?" "Same day, please," I said. He scratched his beard, slid the camera into a plastic tray, and said, "Be back in 4 hours." It was the longest 4 hours of my life. I didn't go home. Couldn't. Instead, I sat in the park across the street watching pigeons fight over crumbs and tried not to think about what those photos might show. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe the camera belonged to someone else, that maybe the gloves were old, the list was innocent, the photos on her phone meant nothing. But part of me knew in the way your body knows when someone is staring at you from behind, knew in the way you can smell smoke before you see the fire. I picked up the envelope just before closing. I didn't open it there. I waited until I got back to the apartment, standing in the hallway, coat still on, heart racing like I'd just escaped something. She wasn't home. That alone was strange. It was after dark. Her shoes weren't by the door. Her keys weren't in the bowl. Lal wasn't even around. I turned on a single light in the living room and peeled open the envelope. There were 24 photos. The first 10 were normal. Trees. A blurry shot of our apartment building from the outside. A man's shoulder in the corner of one frame. Unfamiliar. The next few were less innocent. One showed our bedroom door, slightly ajar, taken from down the hall. Another was of me asleep on the couch, blanket pulled to my chest, mouth open. Then one of me in the shower, steam fogging the glass, the silhouette unmistakably mine. I felt my stomach turn. Then came the last 5. One was a shot of me sitting at the dining table, unaware. Another was of my open laptop, mid-email. Then a photo of me holding the red toothbrush in the kitchen. The same moment I thought I was alone. Who took that picture? She couldn't have. She was in the other room that night. I remember it. I was sure of it. Unless the last 2 photos weren't of me at all. The second to last showed a man standing in the middle of our living room. Face obscured. Back to the camera. Wearing the same brown leather gloves from the box under the bed. His posture was strange, rigid, almost unnatural, like he was waiting for something. And the final photo was of our bed. Empty. But the sheets were pulled back like someone had just gotten up. The timestamp showed it was taken at 3:47 a.m., 3 nights ago. The same night, I thought I heard movement in the kitchen and brushed it off as the cat. Bilal was locked in the bedroom with me that night. My legs gave out. I sat on the floor staring at the photos spread out around me, hands shaking so hard I could barely pick them up. I didn't know who had taken them. I didn't know how. I didn't know why. But I knew one thing for certain. Someone else had been in our home. Someone who wasn't supposed to be. Just then, the front door creaked open. Kala stepped inside, holding a grocery bag. She froze when she saw me on the floor surrounded by the photos. I looked up at her, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't ask a question. I accused. You weren't supposed to leave that camera. Her face didn't change. No panic. No surprise. She just placed the grocery bag gently on the counter, looked me dead in the eyes, and said calmly, I thought you'd find it sooner. I thought you'd find it sooner. She said it like we were talking about misplacing car keys. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My throat felt locked. My hands still hovered over the photos, now scattered across the rug like discarded memories I couldn't put back in the box. I looked at her. She looked at me. For the first time in weeks, we were finally sharing the same moment, and somehow that made it worse. She walked over slowly, calm, measured, as if this scene, me on the floor surrounded by evidence of her surveillance, was just another Wednesday. She didn't flinch when she saw the photo of the man with the gloves. She didn't look away when her own name appeared in the corner of a label I hadn't noticed before, scribbled on the inside of the camera. See, Session 3. Session. Like this was a project. Like I was a project. What is this? I asked, but my voice cracked halfway through. What are you doing to me? Kala crouched down across from me and tilted her head slightly, studying me, not with empathy, not with guilt, but with curiosity, like she was observing a test subject. Something she didn't quite understand yet, but was beginning to. You're asking the wrong question, she said softly. You should be asking what you've already done. I laughed. It came out wrong, sharp, panicked, almost like a cough. What I've done. Are you serious? You're taking photos of me in the shower, in my sleep. You have lists, recordings, God knows what else. I found your box, Kala. The gloves, the notes. You're stalking your own husband, and you're asking me what I've done? She leaned back on her heels, still calm, still watching. Do you remember the window? She asked. My blood ran cold. What window? She didn't blink. The basement window. The one at your parents' house. The one that was always stuck. You used to pry it open with a paint scraper. I felt my heart seize. I hadn't thought about that window in years, decades. It was a tiny, rusted square in the side of my childhood home, half buried behind hydrangeas. When I was 12, I used it to sneak outside after curfew. I'd prop it open and crawl through when the house got too loud, when I couldn't stand the screaming upstairs. I had never told her that. Not once. I don't. I never mentioned that to you, I said. She smiled. But it wasn't cruel. It was worse than cruel. It was intimate. You talk in your sleep. No, that wasn't it. She wasn't just pulling fragmented memories from dreams. She knew details. The way I gripped the scraper with a towel so I wouldn't cut my hand. The sound it made when it popped loose. The tiny scratch on the ledge from the first time it slipped. She knew things I didn't remember telling anyone. I stood up so fast I nearly fell over. What is this? Some kind of sick experiment? Were you hired to? Is this a setup? Am I part of something? Calla stood too, slower, as if she had no fear of me, as if I wasn't on the verge of collapsing. It's not a setup, she said. It's just time. For what? She looked at me, and something flickered across her face, just for a moment. Sadness, maybe, or regret, or something more complicated than either. I'm trying to show you something, but you're not ready yet. My eyes went to the photos again. My sleep, my shower, my toothbrush. How much more do you need to see? I snapped. I've seen enough. More than enough. Calla stepped forward then, gently placed her hand on my chest. It wasn't tender. It was controlled. Her eyes locked onto mine like she was about to deliver a verdict I couldn't appeal. No, she whispered. You've only seen the surface. There are layers, Emery. You know that. You've always known. But you buried them. You let them rot. And now you're terrified of what you'll find underneath. I stepped back. Stop. Stop talking to me like I'm crazy. I'm not, she said. But you're about to feel like you are. I didn't respond. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just turned, went into the bedroom, and slammed the door behind me. And that's when I saw it. A manila envelope, sitting neatly on the pillow where I sleep. Written in her handwriting, in bold, centered letters. Do not open until you remember. I stood there staring at the envelope on my pillow for a long time, like it might move on its own. My hands didn't reach for it. My brain begged me not to. I wasn't sure if it was a trap, or a goodbye letter, or some final twist in whatever dark game I thought she was playing. But more than anything, I was afraid that whatever was inside would prove that I had gone crazy. That I'd built this entire house of dread from shadows and half-memories. That I wasn't the victim, but the architect. Eventually, I sat down, the envelope resting in my lap like a weight I wasn't strong enough to carry. I waited until the apartment was silent again, until I was sure she wasn't going to interrupt. And then, finally, I opened it. Inside were three things. A photograph, a letter, and a receipt. The photo stopped my breath. It was of me and Calla. A Polaroid. Taken 5 years ago. We were in a hospital room, sterile lights above us. Calla holding my hand so tightly her knuckles were white. In the background, a nurse blurred by motion. And in the foreground, on the hospital bed, was a tiny figure swaddled in yellow. A newborn. Our son. My throat closed. The next thing I pulled out was the letter. Emery, you don't remember him. Not really. The accident took that from you. The trauma. The months in and out of hospitals. The days you couldn't speak. The weeks you thought I was your nurse, not your wife. I stayed. I waited. I told myself the memories would come back in pieces. That eventually, you'd remember him. But you didn't. And I couldn't force it. His name was Asa. He lived 32 days. He was beautiful. Quiet. Perfect. You held him. You wept for him. You sang to him once, off-key, but soft. You blamed yourself when we lost him. I told you not to. And when the grief became too much, your mind broke to protect you. You buried it. All of it. I tried, Emery. I really tried. But living beside someone who has forgotten the thing that defined every second of my being, it hollowed me out. That's why I stopped speaking. Not out of hatred, but because every word I said reminded me you couldn't say his name back to me. But then you started remembering. In fragments. In sleep. In the window. In the dreams. And I needed you to see. Not just remember intellectually, but feel it again. Let the wound breathe. I needed you to walk through the fog without me dragging you. Because what we went through, it wasn't just mine to carry. See, the room tilted. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. I pressed the photo against my chest and felt something deep inside me collapse. Not in pain, but in recognition. Suddenly, it wasn't a horror story anymore. It was a love story buried beneath trauma. A marriage distorted by loss. A man whose mind had sealed the doors to his pain, and a woman who stayed just long enough to hand him the key. The final thing in the envelope was the receipt. A recent one. A prepaid appointment with a therapist. 2 names on it. One was hers. The other was mine. She had scheduled it. For both of us. For this week. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually I stood, walked into the living room, and found her on the couch with Lyle in her lap. She looked up, worried, but not afraid. "I remember," I said. My voice cracked. She didn't speak, just opened her arms. And for the first time in months, I let myself fall into them. No more silence. No more surveillance. No more pretending. Only grief. And truth. And the first breath of healing.